The most famous objection to the problem of evil is one that originates with Leibniz, and it's something known as the free will defense. And the idea at a very high level is that the problem of evil is supposed to show an incompatibility of an omnipotent, omniscient, and benevolent God and the existence of evil in the world. And what Leibniz's free will defense, or with free will defense in general, shows is supposed to show that God's existence can actually be shown to be compatible with the existence of evil. And here's how it is intended to work. Leibniz sees God as sitting out there and faced at the point where he's going to create a universe with the decision of which universe is he going to create. Almost like a man playing chess, or a master playing chess, deciding what move is he going to make. If he makes this move and he sees the 10 moves down there, if he makes this different move, he's then thinking about the 20 different combinations of moves. And I guess in God's case, it can be an infinite number of moves, of ways the universe could end up. And Leibniz calls each one of these scenarios, each way the world could have been, a possible world. So God was choosing in creating to create the possible world that he wanted to create. Now, obviously, God's benevolent, so according to Leibniz, God would create the best possible world. And in fact, he wrote a fairly long essay called The Theodicy, maybe it's better characterized as a book, in which he argues that this is the best of all possible worlds. But let's see how this whole idea can be used to show that there's some kind of that there is a compatibility, that it is compatible for God to exist and there to be evil in the world. So think of it this way, that is, the best possible world contains beings that have free will, that act on their own. And the claim that's being made is that moral goodness, things that are actually good, morally right actions, are the result of free beings, people exercising, or beings exercising their free will. For example, you think of Mother Teresa. I mean, she spent her life in the slums in India, helping the people who were most disadvantaged, the poorest people, the people who had the least. Now, if you found out that she had no choice in the matter, that she was forced into that situation, and she was not doing that freely, you would not think that it was such a wonderful thing for her to do. But it was, because we think that she's acting freely. And that is what creates moral goodness, right actions in the world. And when you think about it, if people act freely, well, nothing can restrain or compel their action. So the idea, or the essence of the idea on which the free will defense is based, is that once God creates beings with free will, he can't prevent the being from doing what is wrong. And the idea there is something similar to our explanation of the paradox of the stone. You might recall we talked about, when we were initially talking about omnipotence, that is, can an omnipotent being, or could God really create a stone so big that he can't lift it? And the sort of the paradox, or the trick there, was that if God can create such a stone, there's something he can't do, namely he can't lift it. And if he cannot do that, there's something that he can't do, namely create such a stone. So it begins to look like you now can have an argument to prove that God can't exist because nothing can be omnipotent and it can be all-powerful. But we decided that wasn't quite right. All-powerful beings, it does not imply that he has to be able to create the stone so big that he can't lift it. Similarly, God's choices to create a certain kind of world, namely a world with free being, in doing that, he has by himself limited his omnipotence. And that we don't think is a problem. The only issue now is we get the concept, and we're beginning to see how God's existence, or the existence of an omnipotent, omniscient, and benevolent being, is potentially consistent with the existence of evil in the world. But the question is, and let's go back to our argument on the last page, well, what does that say exactly about this argument? And it's really not clear, because if there's a problem with the argument, it's got to be either in number one, but that just followed from God's existence, because that's an independent premise. Number two is a benevolent being eliminates and prevents all evil that he knows about and can eliminate. Now, some people have tried to argue that a benevolent being might want to leave a certain amount of evil around. I think that one's a little bit of a stretch, but it's not out of the question, but it certainly doesn't sound like a knockdown objection. 3 just follows from 1 and 2, so if there's something wrong with it, we better figure out what's wrong with 1 and 2. 4 is that an omniscient being knows about all the evil that exists, and that one, out of all of the premises here, that one is not going to be the one that is problematic, and certainly we don't see any connection between that and the free will defense. And then there's number 6, that omnipotent being is able to eliminate all evil. And we already talked about number 8 a little bit earlier. There is evil. I mean, people do try to back off and say, well, no, it just looks evil to us, but it's not really evil. I think, again, that's kind of like the objections to number 2. Not really that strong objections. I'm not saying that people can't hold that rationally, but I think it's a tough case to make. But now, at least if we notice and if we look carefully and we're looking at the free will defense, it looks like what the free will defense is telling us is number 6. That is, number 6 is false. That is, an omnipotent being is able to eliminate all the evil. Well, certain omnipotent beings can't eliminate all the evil, especially not God, which I think is what Leibniz is maintaining. And it's a good objection. By a good objection, I should mention, it sounds like at least an objection that can be rationally defended, and it has been rationally defended. And there's been a lot of debate among philosophers whether, in fact, this is a good objection or not. But nonetheless, I just wanted you to see that is the objection, and I think it might very well be a strong objection. And finally, let's just turn to a couple of details about the free will defense.